Dishaye Stevenson was bubbling, always the life of the party and always loving on her family. Making sure her 16-year-old daughter had it all, serving as a caregiver for her mom who had a stroke and is now partially paralyzed. And to top it off, trying to be the perfect wife.
She did everything in her power to show him that she loved him no matter what.
But her sister Jasmine says somehow that love was not enough.
It was a lot of red flags.
Red flags the family didn't catch in time. Police found Stevenson's body Wednesday morning. She'd been shot point blank in the chest. Police say her husband, Michael Smith, is to blame.
Like, I just don't understand. I just want to know why. Why would you take my sister from us? Like, why?
Family says they knew something was wrong Tuesday night when Stevenson's daughter called to say she couldn't get a hold of her mom.
She never leave my niece, no matter what. She never leave my mama, no matter what.
So she called her cousin Nita, and they started looking for her. They tracked her car to these apartments where Stevenson's father-in-law lives.
I seen a big handprint on the driver window. And, you know, I'm a criminal justice major, so I started trying to use like different content clues.
Then came a post from a community blog.
It said that it was a lady shot to death, which was like 3 minutes from where we was at.
When they got there, police confirmed the worst, and officers began searching for Smith. They tracked him to this home. Video shows SWAT outside. But Smith wasn't there. A short time later, police tracked him here to a barbershop not far from that home, where cell phone video captures officers taking him into custody.
Just get away, get out of the situation. I don't wish this on nobody.
Her family sending that message to anyone else who may be going through something similar. In Dallas County, I'm Janelle Fort.
October 24th, 2023, Dallas, Texas. The morning began like any other. 35-year-old Dishaye Stevenson brewed her coffee, hummed to her gospel playlist, and texted her daughter to have a good day at school. It was 6:07 a.m., still dim outside, the kind of gray dawn that hides what's waiting ahead. She left home wearing her navy scrubs and light jacket, heading toward her office at the healthcare center. Her phone buzzed, another message from the man she once helped rebuild his life after prison. She didn't answer. That decision would be her last. They met through a re-entry program months earlier, a place built on faith and second chances. He was freshly released, uncertain but charming, and she saw potential where others saw danger. He just needs guidance, she once told a friend. And so, she gave him more than time, she gave him trust. $10,000 to start over, to rent an apartment, to prove that change was possible. He called it a blessing. She called it mercy. But mercy isn't always safe when it meets the wrong soul. In the weeks that followed, his gratitude turned into dependence. The messages became constant, the tone possessive. When she told him she couldn't give more, he reminded her of what she already had. "You made me believe again," he wrote. "You can't just walk away now." She tried to pull back, to set boundaries, but for men like Michael Smith, boundaries sound like betrayal. And betrayal demands punishment. At 6:42 a.m., a gray Dodge Charger was seen parked near her home. Within an hour, she would be gone. This story isn't just about a murder, it's about a pattern. It's about how compassion, when given to the wrong person, can become a weapon turned against its giver. Through police evidence, testimony, and recorded messages, we'll uncover how Dishaye's act of kindness became the very reason she lost her life, and what it reveals about the dark psychology of control. Before we begin, if you believe in stories that shed light on real lives and real lessons, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Your voice matters. Thank you for helping us bring awareness to victims whose stories still speak long after they're gone. This is the story of compassion, control, and the woman who paid the ultimate price for mercy. Dallas, Texas, summer of 2023. To everyone who knew her, Dishaye Stevenson was the person who gave when she had nothing left to give. She worked full-time at a healthcare center, cared for her teenage daughter, and still found time to mentor women re-entering society after incarceration. Her colleagues described her as the calm in the chaos. Her friends said she saw good in people who didn't deserve it. To her church family, she was faith made human. But that same faith, the one that made her see light in others, would one day lead her straight into darkness. She first met Michael Smith through a prison outreach program in early spring. His letters were soft-spoken, thoughtful, the words of a man who sounded remorseful and ready to change. "You remind me that not everyone gives up on people like me," he wrote. She replied with verses about forgiveness, never realizing she was speaking to someone who understood how to use empathy as currency. When he was released that summer, she greeted him outside the halfway house, offering clothes, a hot meal, and encouragement. "You've got to believe in yourself, Mike," she said. He smiled and promised he would. At first, it felt good to see him making progress. He found part-time work at a warehouse, started attending church, and called her regularly to share updates. But soon, the conversations shifted. He began to talk less about jobs and more about her, what she meant to him, how she kept him sane. When he told her he couldn't afford an apartment, she hesitated. "That's a lot of money," she said softly. "I can pay you back," he replied. "I just need a chance." A week later, she transferred $10,000 from her savings, money she'd been keeping for her daughter's college fund. The bank records labeled the payment simply as restart. When her sister questioned it, she smiled and said, "Everyone deserves a clean slate." She believed it. Completely. But over the next few weeks, his tone changed. His calls grew frequent. His words, sharper. He wanted more time, more money, more attention. When she tried to pull back, he called it disrespect. By late August, friends began noticing she looked tired, jumpy. One coworker remembered her whispering, "I think I helped the wrong person." That thought would become prophecy. Michael Smith was 36 when he walked out of prison that summer, tall, soft-spoken, with the kind of charm that masked volatility. His file listed a string of prior offenses: assault, fraud, intimidation. But he could talk his way through anything, and in the halfway house, that made him stand out. "He's got a silver tongue," one counselor later said. "You want to believe him." Dishaye did. When she met him, he was quiet and grateful, a man who said all the right things. "I'm not that person anymore," he told her. "All I need is a chance to prove it." In those first few weeks after release, he played the part perfectly: church on Sundays, odd jobs during the week, polite texts at night. But control was already his addiction. He began calling her constantly, just to check in. When she didn't pick up, the tone changed. "You busy?" turned into, "Who you with?" "You said you cared" became, "You owe me that." His affection came wrapped in guilt. Dishaye confided in a friend that she felt emotionally cornered, but she still defended him. "He's just scared," she said. "He doesn't know how to be free yet." Freedom, however, wasn't what Michael wanted. He wanted ownership. Bank statements later revealed he'd spent most of her $10,000 on a used gray Dodge Charger, the same car seen near her home weeks later. When she asked why, he said, "I needed to get to work. You said you believed in me." To her, it was frustration. To him, it was defiance. By mid-September, their conversations grew tense. She started ignoring his calls. He started leaving voicemails that chilled investigators months later. "You think you can walk away from me after everything I've been through?" one said. "You don't get to do that." Her family urged her to go to police, but she refused. "He's just angry," she said. "He'll calm down." She was still clinging to the image of the man she thought she'd saved, not the one who saw her as his property. On September 19th, she sent him one last text: "Mike, please stop calling me." His reply came seconds later: "You already gave me everything. You just don't know it yet. A week later, her kindness would cost her everything. September 23, 2023. The evening air was still heavy from a passing storm, and the streetlights on Murdoch Road flickered faintly against the wet pavement. Dishaye had spent most of the day at home, cleaning and catching up on work emails. Around 7 p.m., she called her mother to say she'd bring dinner over the next day. Her tone was calm, maybe even tired, but there was something in her voice her mother couldn't place, a hesitation that didn't sound like her. At 7:42 p.m., a neighbor's security camera captured the gray Dodge Charger slowly passing by her driveway. She was already uneasy. A friend texted her that night asking if she was okay. "He won't stop calling," Dishaye replied. "I blocked him, but he keeps finding ways." The friend told her to go to the police, but she refused again. "He's just lost," she wrote. "He'll get over it." But by 8:30 p.m., her phone showed 8 missed calls from the same number, each lasting less than a minute. At 9:14 p.m., her phone rang again. This time, she answered. What was said in that 5-minute call would never be fully known, but records later showed her voice trembling in the final seconds as she said, "Mike, please don't come here. I'm serious." At 9:36 p.m., her next-door neighbor noticed the sound of tires screeching to a stop outside. Then, silence. Investigators later found that Michael had turned his phone to airplane mode just before arriving, a deliberate move to avoid location tracking. The back door to her home showed no signs of forced entry. He knew the lock. Inside, the scene told the story no one wanted to hear, a struggle that lasted only minutes. A broken coffee mug near the kitchen counter. A spilled glass of water beside her phone. Her smartwatch recorded a sudden spike in heart rate at 9:41 p.m., then nothing. The coroner would later confirm what the evidence already showed, blunt force trauma, followed by asphyxiation. It wasn't rage that drove him in those moments, it was ownership. She told him no, and he decided to erase the version of her that could live without him. At 10:03 p.m., her lights went dark. The Charger sped away 5 minutes later, heading south toward DeSoto. The next morning, her daughter called and got no answer. Her co-workers texted. Her pastor left a voicemail. For 2 days, her phone stayed silent, but in the quiet of her home, the truth was already waiting to be found. The 911 call came in on the morning of September 26, 2023. A concerned coworker had gone to check on Dishaye after she failed to show up for 2 consecutive shifts, something entirely unlike her. When officers arrived, they found her front door locked, her car still in the driveway. It was Officer Kelly Ramirez who first entered through a rear window, flashlight sweeping across a spotless kitchen until she spotted the faint red stain on the floor near the hallway. "I knew right then this wasn't a wellness check anymore," she later told reporters. Detective Marcus Hill of the Dallas Homicide Unit took over within the hour. A veteran with 15 years on the force, Hill described the scene as eerily controlled. Nothing was stolen, nothing overturned except for one knocked-over lamp and a shattered mug near the counter. Her purse sat untouched on the sofa, her phone was face down beside the bed, and the faint smell of cleaning products hung in the air. "It looked like someone tried to erase a story," Hill said, but missed a few sentences. "They found her body on the bedroom floor, calm expression, no signs of defensive wounds, suggesting she knew her killer." The medical examiner confirmed blunt force trauma followed by strangulation. The estimated time of death matched the window of her last phone activity, between 9:30 and 10 p.m. on the 23rd. The killer had left no fingerprints, but he had left something better, a trail of technology. Investigators subpoenaed her phone records first. Over 50 missed calls from Michael Smith appeared in the 48 hours before her death, followed by silence once his device entered airplane mode. "It was a digital blackout," Hill explained. "He turned it off just long enough to disappear, then powered it back up after the crime." Through highway toll data, police located his gray Dodge Charger crossing southbound on I-35 toward DeSoto at 10:14 p.m. That timestamp placed him leaving the area minutes after the estimated time of death. At her church, detectives interviewed members who confirmed that she had recently confided about a man she was trying to distance herself from. One friend broke down during questioning, recalling her last words, "He scares me, but I don't want to give up on him." By the next morning, an arrest warrant was in motion. Officers traced Smith's vehicle through license plate cameras and finally located him outside an abandoned property near Red Bird Lane. When police surrounded the car, he sat still, hands on the wheel, as if expecting them. Inside were 2 duffel bags, one with clothes, the other with her phone and ID, both wiped clean of prints. When he stepped out, he asked only one question: "Did she call anyone before I left?" At headquarters, he confessed to pushing her too hard, insisting he didn't mean for it to go that far. But the evidence told a different story: a man who planned, stalked, and silenced. Detectives found online searches from his account: "How to stop someone from leaving," "Cleaning up DNA," and "What happens if someone refuses to help you." Detective Hill later said he wanted to own her story, even in death.
That's not her. You know what I'm saying? Like, she never leave my niece, no matter what. She never leave my mama, no matter what. So my brother and his girlfriend came, you know, and we just started searching from 12 all the way up until, you know, we had found her that morning. Her car was ditched in Pleasant Village. Like, the way the car was set up, the way it was hid, I just felt it in my bones, like she was gone, but I just didn't want to see it. It was too many red flags. We asked him, he just showing off a gun, telling my brother he don't know, and, you know, knowing that he had already killed my sister. It's just unbelievable.
That night, when news of his arrest broke, Dallas watched in disbelief. Social media flooded with messages from women saying they'd known someone like him. One comment read simply, "She was trying to save him." He just didn't want to be saved, he wanted to be obeyed. The city mourned, but investigators knew their work had just begun. What drove him wasn't just rage, it was pathology. And to understand that, they'd have to look into his mind. When Michael Smith was evaluated by forensic psychologists in early 2024, what emerged wasn't a portrait of insanity but of precision, a man who understood manipulation like a language. He'd been using it for years. Growing up in Fort Worth, he learned early that affection was something you had to control to keep. His father's absences, his mother's instability, all of it taught him that power was the only protection. His juvenile record was filled with small violences: intimidation, theft, coercion. In prison, he refined those traits. According to one former inmate, Mike didn't fight. He talked. He could make you feel like he was your friend, right before he used you. That same gift of persuasion was what first drew Dishaye to him. The re-entry program saw him as a success story, a man who could articulate remorse. But in truth, he was studying her from the moment she wrote him her first letter. He'd already learned how empathy worked, how faith could make people overlook danger. To him, Dishaye wasn't a mentor, she was a mirror reflecting the image he wanted the world to believe in. Her belief in his potential wasn't validation, it was fuel. When she began setting limits, his control began to fracture. Psychologists called it narcissistic collapse, when someone who relies on dominance faces rejection. One of the experts who testified at trial said, he couldn't process "no" as a boundary. To him, it was an insult, a betrayal, an act of war. The messages recovered from his phone made that dynamic clear. "You said you'd never leave me," he wrote 3 days before the murder. "So why are you acting like I don't exist?" Hours later, he texted again, "I'll make you listen." This wasn't about money. The $10,000 was only a symbol, proof that she believed in him once, and that belief gave him psychological ownership. When she refused to give more, he felt robbed of his power. The crime was personal because his motive was emotional dependency disguised as love. As one forensic report described, Smith's pattern of behavior reflects a parasitic attachment. He consumes the empathy of others until it's gone, then punishes them for running out. What made the case so haunting was how ordinary it looked until it wasn't. There were no warnings of physical violence, no police reports, no dramatic threats. It was a slow erosion of boundaries until there was nothing left to erode. That's what control looks like, not chaos, but quiet persistence. During cross-examination, the prosecutor asked him a single question: why her? His response sent a chill through the courtroom. Because she saw me, he said. And when she stopped, I didn't know who I was anymore. The expert later called it the clearest window into his mind. It wasn't about hatred, it was about identity. He needed her to believe in him to survive, and when she stopped, he decided she couldn't survive without him. That's how control ends, not with reason, but with ruin. April 15, 2024, Dallas County Courthouse. The courtroom was silent as the bailiff announced the start of the state of Texas versus Michael Smith. The man at the defense table sat motionless, hands folded, eyes fixed on the floor. He wore a gray suit that looked borrowed and a stare that looked empty. On the other side sat Dishaye's family, her mother clutching a photo of her daughter taken just weeks before her death. The case had drawn national attention, not for its brutality alone, but for its painful irony: a woman killed by the very man she tried to save. Assistant District Attorney Carla Jennings began the prosecution with a single statement that would echo through the trial: she gave him freedom. He repaid her with death. Over the next week, the state laid out a case built on chilling precision: surveillance footage, text messages, and the voice recordings that mapped the timeline of Dishaye's fear. One exhibit contained her final text message to him, sent at 9:19 p.m. on the night of the murder: "Please stop calling me." Jennings paused before reading his reply aloud to the jury: "You already gave me everything." The defense tried to argue diminished capacity, claiming Smith's mental health deteriorated due to trauma and medication withdrawal. But the prosecution countered with a digital trail showing premeditation. His phone search history, displayed on a projector, silenced the room: how to track someone, how to choke without leaving bruises, what happens if she says no. The words hung in the air like a confession typed in real time. Forensic psychologist Dr. Karen Mooney testified that Smith exhibited textbook traits of coercive obsession. She explained that his crimes stemmed not from rage but from entitlement, the belief that love must obey. On cross-examination, she was asked if he understood right from wrong. Her answer was firm. He understood perfectly. He just didn't care. The prosecution's final witness was Detective Marcus Hill. He walked the jury through the evidence: the broken mug, the torn charger, the deleted messages recovered from his cloud storage. Then he said quietly, she wasn't scared of him until it was too late. That's what makes this so hard. When the defense called Michael to testify, his words chilled the courtroom. She said she believed in me, he muttered. Then she stopped. I just wanted her to listen. The prosecutor leaned forward and asked, listen to what? He looked up and said, to how much she meant to me. One juror later said it was the coldest thing she'd ever heard. On April 23, after 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned the verdict: guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. No reaction. No apology. Just silence. As he was led away, Dishaye's mother stood and said through tears, my daughter believed in saving souls. I just wish she hadn't tried to save his. Outside, reporters asked the prosecutor what this case meant. She said quietly, it's a reminder that goodness needs protection too. The months after the trial felt heavier than the verdict itself. For Dallas, this case wasn't just about justice, it was about reckoning. Churches, community groups, and women's shelters began hosting workshops on emotional safety and coercive control. The phrase, be kind, but be careful, started appearing on church bulletin boards and social media posts across the city. Dishaye's story had become more than a tragedy, it was a warning whispered in homes where compassion once came without caution. At her funeral, the pastor spoke through tears. She believed that no one was beyond redemption, he said. And maybe that's still true, but it's not our job to bleed to prove it. Her daughter, standing beside the casket, read a letter she had written weeks earlier. Mom, you taught me that love is brave. But I promise to be brave in a different way, to say no when I need to. The congregation stood in silence, united by sorrow and an unspoken truth: mercy without boundaries can become a doorway to destruction. Detective Marcus Hill, now back on another case, admitted in an interview that this one never left him. We see murder all the time, he said, but this one wasn't about hate. It was about dependence, about someone who thought taking her was the only way to keep her. His words carried weight because they weren't about evil in the abstract, they were about the danger of people who mistake control for love.
Okay, y'all, we are celebrating Dishaye. We got the purple bottle.
Long live Dishaye.
Long live Dishaye. We won today in court. Of course, he was found guilty, and they gave him 55 years. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Long live Dishaye.
Weeks that followed, her friends launched the Dishaye Project, a nonprofit supporting victims of emotional manipulation and post-incarceration abuse. Funded through small donations and church collections, it provided counseling and resources for women rebuilding their lives after helping someone who hurt them. Its slogan, painted on a mural downtown, read, "Grace is strength. But strength needs boundaries." By December, her house had been sold. The new family who moved in kept the same blue front door, unaware of the life that once filled it. But for those who knew her, that home remained sacred ground, the place where kindness lived, and where trust was broken. Her story stayed alive not through fear, but through change. It became a testament that love, no matter how pure, must never cost your safety. October 2024. A soft breeze drifts through the cemetery in South Dallas. The grass has grown tall around a small bronze plaque that reads, "In loving memory of Dishaye Stevenson, she believed in second chances." A coffee cup sits beside fresh flowers, left by her mother every Sunday morning. Her story is no longer just a case file, it's a caution, a lesson written in heartbreak. Because what she gave was love, and what she received was betrayal. Yet in the silence that follows, her message still echoes: help others, but never lose yourself doing it. If this story touched you, share it. Awareness saves lives. Join this community by subscribing so more people understand the hidden dangers of control masked as love. Comment below and tell us where you're watching from tonight, and what safety means to you. Thank you for helping us turn tragedy into truth, and memory into change. Your support keeps stories like Dishaye's alive.